Hey guys, welcome to the Big Picture Business Podcast. This week on this episode, we're going to ask the question, did Kenny Chesney steal our song? So it's a very interesting thing that happened. I was driving down the road one day listening to the radio and I heard this Kenny Chesney song come on. Now this was back in May and I was listening. I hit the chorus of the song and I was like, wait a minute. That sounds like our song, our Forever Yours song that Dominica and I wrote 7 years before that. Now, what's interesting also is that we promoted that song and it actually ended up on country music radio. So we started asking this question, did Kenny Chesney really steal our song? So we're going to let you decide that. We're going to actually play that in a little bit. But we're also going to be talking today about intellectual property.
We're going to cover a lot. And this episode, I feel like, is going to be so important for so many of you. If you are in the stage where you're just getting started, where you haven't really thought, a few months ahead, what happens when all of a sudden someone picks up your great ideas? Intellectual property and what that means. We're talking about creations of your own mind, right? So inventions, names, brands, designs, images. If you've written a book, so anything literary, anything that's artistic, that's used for commerce, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about. And also we're going to discuss the difference between tangible and intangible property. It's a big episode, so get ready. But first, did Kenny Chesney steal our song? We're going to go ahead and play a clip from our song Here and Now that we put out into the world 7 years ago. Okay, here we go. All right, and here is Kenny Chesney's song that was released 7 years after ours. Here we go.
So something I want to point out is that Kenny Chesney did not actually write this song himself. This was one of the songs that was written for him. Now, this happens with a lot of people in the music industry. They either collaborate with other writers or they have songs sent to them for them to perform that someone wrote for them. It was a couple of other guys who wrote this song specifically for him because I looked it up because I was interested in how did this come about. So as I mentioned earlier, our song had been played on country radio. We kind of always felt it wasn't supposed to have been played on country radio, but the radio promotion company that we were working with, they insisted that it go on country radio.
Yeah.
And that's where it ended up. It became a top 100 song, so it did get quite a bit of rotation at the time. The thing to think about is that ideas can get stuck in your mind. So one of those writers could have heard that song and years later written something similar. This happens quite often, actually. But it's still an intellectual property issue. And for the copyright on the song, technically we could go after Kenny Chesney / the writers of the song and bring that to court for them to look at it. Now, it's very expensive to do that. You have to hire lawyers and go through a whole process. Is it going to be worth it? That's where it's debatable. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. There's a lot of situations where this happens in the music industry where someone a few years later will be like, you stole that melody from my song, those lyrics from my song. So when you're looking at a song, what can you actually copyright? And the melody of the vocals, the lead instruments you can copy are considered copywritten intellectual property. The lyrics for the song are also, but the chords underneath, not so much. That's why you can have so many songs with the same 3 or 4 chords that are playing the song. People aren't going to sue you because you use those same 4 chords because you can't really copyright that. Because what people do is they use that as the foundation. They make different melodies on top, which is what the vocal line is singing. They use different lyrics, etc. Now, one of the most recent ones that happened, this was a few years back, but it was between Joe Satriani and Coldplay. So Coldplay had this huge song, Viva la Vida, and Joe Satriani heard the song and he recognized that the vocal melody was almost note for note exactly what he had written for one of his songs, which was called If I Could Fly. the song that Joe Satriani wrote was years and years before when Coldplay song came out, and he heard it and he said, that is the same melody that I wrote on the guitar that was used for the vocals. Coldplay said, we've never heard that song, etc. But he came back and said, well, my song was a hit. It was played on radios all over the world. You may have heard it at some point without realizing it, and then, created this. Now, Joe Satriani won.
Yeah.
So what did that mean? Well, they had to go to court. A judge had to evaluate. Was it close enough to take in? When they did a back-to-back comparison, it was like 95% the same melody and same notes. They said it was close enough that they felt it was taken from Joe Satriani, and now he gets paid a royalty for everything that Coldplay made on that song in the past and in the future.
Yeah.
It also means that because copyright and intellectual property extends just beyond just what you hear on the radio, is that when they play that song live, they have to pay them a royalty.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets really deep into this stuff, especially in the music industry, because there's so many ways that music is used. If it's used in a YouTube video, and if it's used in a commercial, then he's always going to get a little cut of that song.
Even if it's like a few cents, but it's something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah. When you sent me the Kenny Chesney song, because you were driving in your car, and I remember like you said that you came home and you immediately sent me the song. You're like, listen to this.
Right.
And I listened to it, and my first reaction was like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. Because I took it as a compliment. It's like, if somewhere down the line, either, his writers heard it, or if he heard it or whatever, wow.
Well, and he still had to approve it, even though they had written it and all of that, using a slightly different melody, same words, but general ideas it's very close.
Yeah.
And it's in the exact same placement in the song as where we wrote it.
Yes.
In the exact same starting point, like everything of how the chorus hits. There's a lot of similarities. Is it exact? No. So that's where it could become a little bit debatable in a courtroom. But we feel we would have a pretty decent case on that one.
Oh, absolutely. Especially because we can mark it very clearly on when we released it, and the fact that it played on the radio and it was top 100 and all that. So we could build a case. Now, in my case, in just like sitting here and thinking about it, I don't feel today, we could change our mind later on down the line, but I don't feel like it's worth my energy, our energy, to try to go after something like this. I feel like, Kenny Chesney's putting good music out there. Great. If we had some influence on that, awesome. But here's the thing that does upset me. And that comes down to the fact that YouTube completely just squashed our promotion for this song. And if that had not happened, we could be in a totally different position right now with this song. It could still be playing. It could have gone on to, do more. I want to show you guys the back end of the YouTube channel that we uploaded our Here and Now music video to. Because when you go right now, let me just show you here. When you go right now, it doesn't look very impressive. I mean, it has
like
807 views. And that doesn't really make much sense.
How do you have a top 100 song with 807 views, right?
You don't. And I'm going to show you why and what the heck happened. Okay, so here we are on the back end of our Forever Yours YouTube channel. Now, you can see right here, there are two spots here where we uploaded, the video. The first time we uploaded the video, it was published April 15th, 2013, and it got 259,000 views. Now, for some reason, it was removed because YouTube claimed that it went against the terms of service. Okay. It went
against. We'll explain in a second.
Yeah.
Now we re-uploaded it.
Happened on May 5th. Okay. Because we contested it. And they said, just re-upload it. So, okay. And then it got 556,000 views. Okay. And then guess what happened? They took it down.
Yeah. And you'll see that if you're watching this on the video, that the third time we uploaded it, was August 20th. Now, what happened between May 5th and August 20th? Well, and really what happened between April 15th and August 20th? Okay, so we essentially went into this battle with YouTube of trying to figure out why they kept removing our video.
It was getting flagged, and it kept getting flagged, whether it was a competitor or whether we still don't have a full understanding of it.
Boyfriend.
Yeah. No. But the first time the video went down, it said that it had pornographic content. It's a lot of my face. Like, I get that, but there's nothing like pornographic happening. So this piece is so frustrating, where we rely on companies like Google, YouTube to help us push out these campaigns. And this was a real like shot in the gut, honestly. When this happened, it was like, come on.
Well, we timed everything with our radio promotion, and all the other ads and promotion that we were running at the time to hit, and you can see how it worked. I mean, the radio promotion worked because it got top 100. The YouTube promotion worked because we were getting hundreds of thousands of views of the video. But there comes a point where you run out of budget, and you run out of momentum of something being new and interesting.
Right. And like how many when something hits top 100, you get one shot to either keep it going or it just falls completely off the planet. And unfortunately, due to budget restrictions and all that stuff, and for YouTube just not willing to work with us on this, we gave it our best shot, and we re-uploaded it, and it didn't get taken down, and now it has a measly 800 views.
Now, granted, we didn't run any more promotions.
No, we were done.
Yeah.
But it's a great song. I sang it for my sister's wedding. And it's, just the fact that we're able to even like talk about this on the podcast and see what Kenny Chesney put out. It's like, well, okay. So if the melody that I came up with and the lyrics that we came up with and all this stuff, like, okay, I mean, at least it's still out there, but it's still like, it stings a little bit, because of all the time and effort we put into this.
Yeah.
It's not easy to put your heart out there and then have YouTube kill it. On the YouTube side of things, to protect your intellectual property, if something comes up, you can go back, you can contest it. YouTube in more recent years have become a lot better at people actually looking at it manually. It's not just like robots looking at stuff so much anymore. It's actual employees. And I actually see that there is a button here on YouTube now that says like resubmit. And I just might do it because you never know, it'd be interesting to see what we learn now. Okay, so real quick, I want to just cover the difference between tangible and intangible property. So Rory's and my song is intangible, right? It's not something someone's going to hold online. Now, we sold albums, like physical albums, so that's considered tangible. But in this case, with what we're talking about with YouTube, it's intangible property. So anyone could technically do what they want with it. They could put it into their own YouTube videos. They can, steal clips of it. But Rory and I were smart enough, and we made sure to copyright all of our intellectual property, all of our songs, right? Now, let's talk about the difference between intellectual property and copyright. Rory, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Intellectual property law exists in order to protect the creators of the information and covers the areas of copyright and trademark law and patents. So intellectual property is basically like an umbrella term that encompasses both copyright and intellectual property, such as trademarks and patents and inventions.
Right, exactly.
So what we're looking at is saying that intellectual property is the overall term, but how you actually go about doing copyrights, how you do trademarks, patents, and inventions is they all have their different paths and processes that you have to go through in order to be protected.
Right. And so there's three main types of intellectual property, right? Like Rory just mentioned, you've got the copyright, trademark, and patents. Okay. So those are important distinctions to know what your intellectual property is, what you've created, and then how to break it down and categorize it so that you can get it registered and to protect yourself.
Yeah. So for example, we can copyright our music, right? But we don't copyright the band name. We trademark the band name. And so you can have trademarks, you can have also service marks as well. But basically, when you're going for copyright, that relates to a larger group of information, such as like songs, lyrics, the content of a book. When you're doing trademarks, it's usually more around like titles and brand names.
Yeah. And then patents, that all comes down to if you're developing software, if you're developing product, if it's a gadget, something where it has steps in which you built it. Very, very clear steps on how to do that. Now, here's another way that you can protect yourself, okay? I think patents are important. However, I have to just say you should be a little bit weary about doing a patent just because once you actually submit it, it's on the internet. It's out there for everyone to view. So I would make certain that you have very clear steps on what to do next once you've submitted the patent, if you're going to go manufacturing, depending on what you're going to do with it, because anyone could look at your patent, could take every single step that you've included in the write-up to get it registered and make one or two small minor tweaks, and they wouldn't be going against what you've already tried to patent. If you've ever watched Shark Tank, you've probably heard a lot of people say patent pending. And that's because there's so many patents out there that people have to go dig through the stack of patents in a very similar category that you've submitted it for to make sure that it is actually unique to itself. And during that time, anyone can just swoop right in, check out your patent, even if it's pending, it'll say pending online. And they can, again, just make one or two small tweaks and basically take it for their own, and they'll run with it, and sometimes further and faster. And it's all about who's the first to market. So patents are great. Just have a plan way in advance before you submit that.
Yeah. And I also want to mention around trademarks, going through that process, there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's these companies that'll say, all you have to do is fill out this paperwork, you pay this fee and you submit it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not exactly true. If you're lucky, you can submit it. And if there's no other trademarks out there, then you can get it passed. But if you haven't done the research and they come back and say, well, there's already this trademark that exists, then what'll happen is they'll send it back, say, we're keeping all your money, your $500 or $1,000 you just submitted to us, and you can't do anything about it. You don't get your trademark because it already exists. So there's research that goes into this. I highly recommend working with a lawyer who specializes in this. In fact, in the future, we are going to bring on one of my clients who actually specializes in this type of information. We're going to interview her on the podcast to go deeper into this because this is her specialty. That's what she wrote her book around. Actually, we'll put a link to the book in the description below. If you're needing that information right now, you can get started there. But we are going to do a full episode that really takes her as the expert and goes through each of these stages of how to approach it.
That's going to be great. I'm looking forward to that. Always more to learn. Even though I feel like I've got a good handle on this stuff, there is always new laws that come out. And
yeah, we're not lawyers, so
no,
right? And she is, and that's her specialty, right? She does a ton of high level stuff that we'll get into when we interview her. But it's just nuts, the stuff you need to know and that you don't know, and that you probably won't find. And then if you need someone to work with, I highly recommend her because she'll just take care of you and get it done.
Excellent.
We're going to have her on the podcast. Her name is Cheryl Hodgson, and she'll go over all of this information in a lot more detail. But what we want to do right now is share with you 7 effective ways to protect your IP.
And by IP, we're not talking about your computers. We're talking about your intellectual property.
Well, that would be IT.
Well, no, IP address.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Touche. Okay, so number 1, what we just talked about, you really want to make sure that you're going to register your copyrights, your trademarks. Like I mentioned, be wary of patents. Make sure you have a plan in place.
The other thing is you want to register your business, your product, and your domain names. You want to make sure that you've got everything in alignment for what the brand names that you're coming up with.
Absolutely. As the branding geek between us, I'm always encouraging my clients 100%. You've got to make sure that you are protecting your brand. In fact, I got a quick story. One of my first businesses was called Lovebird Chocolates. And the chocolate, we got it into Whole Foods Market. It was super exciting. We got it in there just before Valentine's Day. Makes sense. Chocolate, love, whole deal. I walked in to Whole Foods Market, only to find that over their bakery section, they had my logo that said Lovebird Valentine. They took out the word chocolate, but it was my logo. The only things that were different was the birds were yellow, my birds were blue in the logo, and they took out the word chocolate. Same font, everything else. And I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. I was standing there going, are you kidding me? And like Rory had mentioned earlier, sometimes people see things and they just go, oh, yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen this before, but it just came to mind. So I don't feel like it was malicious by any means at all. It was just the artist that they had in that department, hands down, saw the logo. And I showed the logo to the woman in the specialty food section of the shop. And she was like, whoa, you're right. That's your logo. But it was this really uncomfortable, like, well, are you going to take that down? So they compromised with me and they put my chocolate up front and center in the bakery section to kind of go hand in hand. And I was like, okay, fine, that works. We'll just leave it at that. But it's incredible how logos get stolen all the time without people who, like the ones who have stolen it, haven't even realized that they have. It's just something they've seen. Similar to the Kenny Chesney thing. Like maybe he heard it somewhere, it's just, it's amazing how the mind works that way.
Right. And, we actually had two other things with our Forever Yours logos.
Yes. The perfume company. Remember that?
Yeah. That was crazy because we designed multiple logos for Forever Yours.
Mm-hmm.
So we had all of these different logos that we were using. We had a text-based one. We had scripty ones. We had like a big Superman type logo. And we just started seeing people ripping them off.
Yeah, left and right. It was nonstop. And I'd never seen these logos before. And then as soon as we put it out into the world, it was like, wait, what? We had an infinity symbol, and you can't really trademark the infinity symbol, right? It was a perfume called Forever Yours, and their logo had the infinity symbol, and it was our exact same staggered font. Exact same. It was as if we put it out.
Exactly, yeah. And there was another band that stole our logo. They had a different name, but remember it had FY in it.
And it was in the Superman form, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was in the Superman form on that one.
I forgot about that. Oh man. Yeah.
And that was some pop band that just came out in the last couple of years.
And they had like millions, like hundreds of millions of fans.
Yeah, it was and basically off of using our logos.
Our logo.
Then there was a band that came out and called themselves Forever Yours. Their music got attached to our music on Spotify, on an Apple.
On our iTunes. That's right. That's right. So anytime someone typed in Forever Yours, they were coming up, but our songs were embedded in their stuff. It was weird.
Yeah. So we had to go through this whole process of getting their stuff removed from us and saying like, they are not
us.
Our band.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was just so bad. Like I would never, I feel bad saying this, but like, I would never want that music to be associated with us. Like it was just so not what we do.
Well, if I remember correctly, it was pretty dark. Like the music. Yeah. It was just, it didn't make any sense. Like here we are talking about like, you are enough, here and now, like suicide prevention awareness stuff. And they're talking about like the super dark topics. So yeah, that was a very necessary, let's not associate. So yeah, anyways, back to what we were talking about, which is the 7 effective ways to protect your intellectual property. So we've covered number 1 is register, copyright, trademark. Okay. Number 2, register your business, products, domain names. Number 3, we want to create confidentiality here. So non-disclosure agreements, licensing contracts for your employees or partners. So we haven't really talked about that side yet, right? So it's one thing for you to come up with this fabulous idea and then to get it trademarked and patented and all that. But if you're doing this as a business and you have employees, how does that all work? And that can get a little sticky sometimes because you want to keep all this information to yourself and be quite private about it until you're ready to launch it into the world. So it's so important to understand how contracts actually work. And if you have no idea, I would be doing some research and I would be hiring some legal counsel to help you navigate that.
Some of the ways that you can look at this is when you create your non-disclosure and confidentiality agreements, usually it's for a certain period of time.
Mm.
So, and you may have to renew these depending on who you're working with. If you're hiring contractors to do work, you may be paying them for what they create, and then you own it completely. Other times, like if you're working with a photographer, for example, they may still own the right to that image, and you just may be able to use it. There's different ways that that copyright is used in these different situations. So you got to know what it is that you're getting into. Again, hire a lawyer to work through this, especially if it's something that's really important, or just learn the right terminology so that you can have a proper conversation about this stuff. But when you're working for a larger company, you might run into this. So say you work for Apple. Well, Apple has in their contracts, and many other companies do this as well, is where what they'll do is they will make it so that anything that you create while you're an employee of the company, whether on or off the clock with them during that period where you're employed, they own whatever that is. So you cannot go and create something
on your own.
But you couldn't go create an app on your own while you're an employee of the company. And
well, you could, but they own it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They would own the right to it. If if you're, the other thing is that even if you try to do that in secret and they find out that you were creating it during that time period you were employed, even though you didn't release it, they could still come after you for that.
Yep, absolutely.
And they have the money, they have the lawyers to win.
Yeah.
So,
and they will.
Yeah. So, really pay attention to stuff like that. Know what you're signing anytime you're signing a contract, and know that you have the right contracts in place for what you're doing in your business.
If you're the business owner in this case, protect yourself, but also protect your employees. If someone's working for you and they want to go create an app, or they've come up with something, give them the opportunity to do something with it. Don't be a jerk. Help other people. Like, they'll help you, help them. It could work out very well. But yes, know what you're signing, know what you're asking people to sign. I would never just go to Google and download, like, I don't know, confidentiality agreement and not read it. Like, make sure you know what the heck is happening. Super important.
Yeah. A lot of that stuff won't hold up in court.
When I receive a non-disclosure agreement and I go to sign it, I realize that 9 times out of 10, it really is like a blanket, just here's a random document someone thinks they need to give me. And I know that it's not like legit. And that's one of the first things I actually talk about with new clients is like, let's go over some contract stuff here, because this would not hold up. Like, I'm not a jerk. I'm not going to go share your personal things. However, this is just a piece of paper with my signature on it, and this isn't going to do much. So yes, please protect yourself, protect employees, contractors, all that jazz.
Yeah. Actually, the contract that we use in my business is called a mutual non-disclosure agreement, because it's beneficial for both parties, protects everyone. We're not going to steal the information that you're sharing with us. We're not going to, use that for our own business practices, but also you can't poach our employees or our contractors from us, because you're going to, know who they are and be working with them. And a few people have tried, but luckily I have such good relationships with my team and business partners and stuff that they go, yeah, this ain't cool. I don't want to work with you anymore because of that.
Yeah. I mean, that's happened just to us a couple of times. Yeah. It's just,
it will happen because people don't look at what they're signing. They don't understand it, and they think they can just do whatever they want.
Yeah. And if you feel pressured, if someone's like, here, just sign this real quick. No, take the time.
Yeah.
People in the long run, people will respect you more for taking the time to really review, because they know you're, serious.
Yeah. Don't sign anything under distress.
Yeah.
Like that's huge, because people get put into situations where they feel they're forced to do this. And this can be in business. It can be anywhere in life. So really like think about that. If you're feeling like this situation isn't good and that you need outside counsel, please get it.
You can also ask if someone is asking you to sign an NDA, you can say, hey, can you walk me through this? And just have them point to it and say, what does this mean? What does this clause mean? And just talk it through. I've had a few of my clients do that, and I loved that. I loved that they asked me to do that. It shows that they actually care. So Anyways, okay, moving on. Number 4 on our list of 7 effective ways to protect your IP, implement security measures. So what I mean by that, I mean, we've already discussed the contract aspect. Make sure you put a password protection on your computer, make sure that no one has your email password, things like that. Like, just be smart, change your passwords regularly, extra security measures to know who's logging in and out at different times so you can have a record and see what people are actually doing in that type of setting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really important. We ran into this in the music industry a lot where, because I worked with a lot of bands and I, produced a lot of music, people were always scared that their music was going to get leaked before they were ready to put it out. And this is still a huge thing because they lose that momentum that they've built up and that anticipation and the ability to monetize it because it just gets put out there.
Yeah.
So you have to, this is the same thing with any type of product like that. Some companies will intentionally leak little things about their stuff as part of their marketing strategy, but they're not putting their like real intellectual property out there.
Right.
Occasionally it'll happen where bands will put their music out and just be like, okay, whatever, but that's part of the marketing strategy. They're trying something out. Right. But in the majority of things, everything is under wraps. And a lot of times in certain contracts, I mean, you could, if something gets leaked, this happens with movies as well.
Before they go live. Yeah.
Before they go live, if you leak something, you may be on the hook for like $1 million penalty.
Yeah. Yeah. That's no joke. That's something to not mess around with.
So you really have to be careful about what you say, who you say it to, when you're dealing with this, with information that is, protected.
Talk about serious mismanagement. The most recent one that comes to mind is Scooter Braun and Taylor Swift, right? He swooped in and bought her entire catalog for millions of dollars. And she was never given the opportunity to buy her own music back, to get the rights to her own songs, which she wrote.
Yeah.
And that is insane. So yeah, again, back to know what you're signing. Extra security precautions.
How the Beatles didn't own their own music.
Yep.
Michael Jackson owned it.
I know.
Now I think.
Well, I mean, he bought some of it
back after Michael died, but like that's huge. Like and I've seen this wave of people this has been in the last few weeks.
Selling their catalogs.
People selling their catalogs of music.
Bob Dylan.
Yeah, it was Bob Dylan. Neil Young sold half his catalog. Fleetwood Mac, all their solo songs for, I think it was Mick Fleetwood who sold all of his solo songs off. Why are they doing this? Well, because they're making more money selling that off than they are off of streams.
Exactly. Like how many times would their songs have to play? So Bob Dylan, he sold off over 600 songs for $300 million.
Yeah.
That's a significant chunk of change.
And you think about it, how many streams would it take to sell $300 million worth of the music? And then that money is split between so many different people.
Yeah.
Right. So when he can just say, well, I own this music, I'm just going to sell it off. It's worth a lot because of the place that he's at. It doesn't help new artists. New artists aren't in that place, but for established artists who've been around a long time, they have that opportunity right now. And it seems like a lot of them are taking it up because they're like, we don't see how we can long-term make that type of money off of it. Now, streams are not the only way you make money in music. They can license it for commercials and movies and things like that. So they do get big paydays from stuff like that. But still, if you're offer $300 million now versus, the potential to make, millions in the future, maybe even more than 300 million, most people take the now.
Of course. And Bob Dylan is 79 years old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
he doesn't have much longer to wait for.
Yeah. Where are you at in life? How about you enjoy the fruits of your labor? Yeah. Okay. So number 5 on our list here, I don't think that this is the case always, but a lot of professionals say to avoid joint ownership of intellectual property. Okay. Now, this is not the case all the time, but it's so important to know who you're getting in bed with, so to speak, right? Like when you go into a business venture with someone, it's like a marriage in and of itself. You got to know who you're talking to. Like for example, I trust Rory wholeheartedly. Like if we decide to, patent something, and if we went into business together, which we're already in business together, but if we decide to do something new, I would trust whatever, it's all going to work out. It's going to be great because that's who Rory is. I would never screw Rory over. We've known each other for over a decade now, so just know who you're getting in business with. That's the big piece there. If something new is on the table and someone's like, hey, I just met this person 2 weeks ago. We've got this great idea and everything's going to work out, I would slow the roll on that one. Be very, very cautious.
Well, both of us have gotten burned pretty big time.
So big time.
My record label ended up crashing after I built it up to be, international sales all over the world. Like we were doing really well. And then I brought on a business partner who was supposed to really help take it to the next level. Mm-hmm. And he just tanked everything.
That's so miserable.
Yeah.
That's so disappointing.
And then I got left with, tens of thousands of dollars of debt because of him. Right. And so you get in these situations and you learn from them.
Yeah.
And this is, why a lot of people say don't have joint ownership. Now, Dominica and I have joint ownership over every song we've ever written together. That becomes, you can't really get around unless you hire someone out for work for hire. You can go and say, I'm going to hire this guitarist to play on this song and pay them a flat rate to do. And this happens a lot in Nashville with studio musicians where the musician will come in, you'll pay them a couple $100. They'll write what they write. They don't own any of it. The person who wrote the song owns it, and they just pay them that flat rate. And they sign a contract and say, whatever you gave us is ours and we can use it however we want. Mm-hmm. And they're happy to do that because they get paid up front. They don't have to wait around to see if they will actually make money, if the song's going to be a hit or not, all these things. There's a lot of benefits to that side as well. But the point is just know who you're getting into business with and be very cautious about it. Not everyone has the best of intentions.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's just where we're at. Greed is deep for a lot of folks. So be aware of that. Okay, next up, number 6. We're getting closer here. Number 6 is keep it quiet. So you've got something super cool. Don't go post it on social media. Think these things through. I wouldn't even go tell certain family members. You know who the gossip is in your family. I know who it is in my family. You just gotta be quiet about these things until you're ready, until you have a plan in place, and then you can blast it out into the world. But until there's a plan, I'd keep it quiet.
Yeah, and if you have a mentor that you're working with to kind of help you through some of this stuff, well, first off, you've probably got a non-disclosure agreement with them, or you should.
You should.
If you don't. But like they're there to help you sort through that. So that's one place where you're going to have to be willing to open up. But what Dominica is saying is do not just go and share this with just random people, because word spreads very quickly and you may not even realize how quickly it spreads. So you want to make sure that the intellectual property, the stuff that you're creating that either exists physically or doesn't exist, it's just a concept in the mind, is not stolen. Okay. Now, this brings up another thing that I wanted to talk about intellectual property, because the creation of ideas.
Okay? Oh yeah, there's like a scientific thing around this, right? So
this was like a month, 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Where Shawn Mendes came out with a live video live concert on Netflix. And I just happened to be playing it in the background while I was doing some work. And this song comes on and I start listening to it. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Wait, I've heard that before. Wait, I wrote it, and I picked up my guitar and I started playing it. And it was like almost note for note, rhythm, like timing, everything was exactly the same. Now, I had written that 5 years prior.
And he sent it to me.
And Dominica is the only person who heard it, because we just started creating some demos. And I sent her like 7 or 8 demos of songs, ideas to choose from.
Yeah.
And that was the only time. I'd always like really loved the riff that I'd written, but we didn't actually, move forward with it. So it was just sitting on my computer. I went, And I looked at the date that I had recorded it, and I knew I had written it about a year before that even. And that was, so I had recorded, I think it was in 2016. I had written it in 2015. And, but Dominica and I are the only ones who have ever heard it. And I brought it up, I called Dominica. We were on Zoom, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, here's this from this music video. And I played it for 30 seconds. And then I played mine, and she's like, holy crap, that is 100% exact.
There is nothing different about it. Seriously, not a thing. Like the Kenny Chesney thing, it's like, there's some differences for sure. But this is like dead on. But we never did anything with it.
We never did anything. There's no way that Shawn Mendes have heard this. So what this brings about is there's this scientific theory called multiple independent discovery. And this happens a lot in the scientific community because you have scientists working on trying to solve a problem. And a lot of times what will happen is that multiple scientists will solve it right around the same time. And so that's where this theory came up. And there's been, quite a lot of proof of this happening. They say that Edison, created the light bulb, but, there was other people who actually had invented it, right around the same time as well.
But he was the first to market, so he wins. He was
the first to market, and he was able to get the patent, all these things, right? Mm-hmm. So, there's a lot that goes into this, but you have to realize that sometimes it's just, there's like some higher level of stuff where people are creating ideas, and they're creating the same type of idea.
Mm-hmm. It's like out there in the ethers. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that's happened to us a couple times. You thought of the friggin' iPhone. I thought of the iPad. Okay, so you thought of the iPad. I thought of coffee sprinkles. But it's amazing how you think of these things, then all of a sudden your inbox says, check out this new product. And you're like, that's my product that I never did anything with, but somebody else did.
Well, yeah. And then, there's this new show on Netflix. It's called something about leftovers. It's a cooking show, like all using leftovers.
Oh, I gotta watch.
And, this guy was talking about how, he's creating his own YouTube channel or something about going into people's houses and just cooking with what they have. I had that idea 20 years ago. It was called Grandma's Kitchen.
What? Another missed opportunity.
Yeah.
But here we are, right?
But, it's an idea. I never acted on it. We've talked about this before. If you don't take action, like things don't happen. It was an idea. I am, not a professional chef. If I was, that's what I would have done. I actually came up with the idea for one of my friends who was a professional chef, but he decided to go into the military instead of go that route. But you can come up with these ideas, but if you don't have the protections behind it, you can't do anything. You can't go after people, if they steal your ideas or anything like that, because you didn't put in the work to protect it in the first place. Mm-hmm. So document everything. That's like one of my biggest things is, as you're going through all of the music that we record, I have all the session files and they're date stamped of when that was created. So if we go into a courtroom, we can say, well, look, these are when these files were created versus, when this, was it filed with the Copyright Office, which, our stuff was. Do you have proof that it was, in our case, posted on YouTube with the music video? Like we could go through list by list by list. We have all this documented proof that this existed at a specific time and was even created before when we actually released it.
We also have videos too. When we were in the studio recording like the original sessions, I found them just the other day. I have voice memos on an old iPhone of us working out the melody for Here and Now.
Yeah.
And so, we have all that, which is pretty cool. It's kind of funny to go back. There was a few different directions we could have taken that song, but what we landed on, Kenny Chesney really liked. So. Oh my goodness.
Oh, we have one more, don't we?
We do. We have one more. Yeah.
Yes. So we promised 7. We're giving you 7, but we've thrown in a few other tips in the middle here.
Yeah, you know us. Number 7 is if you're working in an office setting, and it could be Zoom office style, but if you have some intellectual property or you have presented a new product, whatever it might be, make sure that you are putting separate teams in different areas if you're building this out as a company. So if you're building out a piece of software, for example, make it so that one team doesn't have what they fully need for the other one to come together and to potentially steal. So be strategic about how much information you give to one team or one person, and be selective of who has all the information. Again, it all goes back to protecting yourself, putting contracts in place, security measures, keep your mouth shut until you're ready.
Right. And, this was just the other day. I don't remember if it was a discussion with you or someone else where someone was trying to figure out the ingredients to a product. And they called up the company and said, well, what's in your product? And they're like, we can't tell you. Like,
doesn't it say it on the back of the product though? The general,
whatever the case was, it was like a proprietary thing. And they're like, only 2 people in the whole company know what the ingredients are for this, like the specific details of it.
Of course. Yeah. How many times did we get asked about that with Lovebird chocolates, with the vegan and raw truffles? People were like, what is the secret? And I would just tell people it was love, and leave it at that. And there's a lot of people that tried to recreate it.
Oh, yeah, because this is the thing, like you still have to put certain ingredients on packaging.
Yeah.
But you don't have to put all of them.
And they don't know the brands of the ingredients.
They don't know the brands of the ingredients. They don't know the levels of how much is in there. Everything adds up. I mean, if you've ever made like pasta and used a different sauce than you normally use, it can taste completely different just by having that one different thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So separate teams, protect yourself.
Yeah.
And here, you know what, when all is said and done, right? Like I mentioned a little while ago, I could have been super upset over the Kenny Chesney thing. I could have been super upset over the fact that our brand has been stolen multiple times for Forever Yours. I chose the high road and just said, wow, that's such a compliment. It's a compliment to the fact that we have built a very strong, multiple, very, very strong brands that are recognized, whether people realize that it's our brands or not. They've internalized it and they've done something with it. And so to me, I look at that and go, that's solid. We're very good at marketing. So that's that piece of it. The other piece though, is you have to know how to respond if someone has stolen your intellectual property, right? And so first bit of advice, I say, stay calm and take your personal emotion out of it. Like when I walked into Whole Foods and I saw in their bakery section, they had my logo, right? I could have flipped out. But instead, I took a deep breath and I was like, well, okay, what kind of, spin can we do here? Like, I don't want to be upset about it. So what can we do to make it like fair? Let's move forward with this. Okay. So stay calm, take a deep breath, and then gather your factual evidence with dates, like we're talking about, how Rory has categorized everything for us. And if someone actually stole like all of our lyrics for Here and Now, that'd be real obvious. And we would 100% take that to court. Be like, no.
Yeah. If it was exactly the same or something. Yeah.
That'd be a whole different story. Yeah.
Yeah.
So make sure that as you're moving forward, if you're planning on developing products, brands, services, all that stuff, make sure it's dated. Okay. That's important. And then if you're faced with a situation like Rory and I are with the Kenny Chesney situation, just decide if it's worth pursuing. I can't speak for Rory, but for me, there's a lot more money to be made with what I'm currently doing. I don't think it's a good use of, I don't think it's a good use of our time, our energy, and our money to pursue that.
Well, I'm always cautious with legal stuff. And my reason for that in spending a ton of money on legal counsel, unless it's very, very much needed, is because I had a family friend I grew up with who was a multi-millionaire, but he ended up completely broke, living on church donations because he got so mad about being taken advantage of that he just tried to keep suing this doctor who kept screwing him over, and it drained every dollar and cent he had. and the lawyers won out. He was left with nothing at the end of his life. And so
that's so sad.
I'm always a bit cautious with that stuff because your ego and your desire to be right could potentially ruin you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So kind of heavy, but let's go back to Kenny Chesney. We actually want to know what your thoughts are on, if Kenny Chesney stole our song or not. We'll leave it up to you guys. And, leave messages in the comments if you're listening on YouTube. Reach out to us, send us an email. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and we hope you enjoy the songs. I mean, both are great songs. So
yeah, they are. And Kenny, if you're watching this, great song, man.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that's it for this episode. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us on the Big Picture Business Podcast this week. On the next episode, we speak with twin brothers and fitness business superstars Eric and Chris Martinez about using social media to fuel your business growth. We dive into topics such as the power of Instagram in communicating with your ideal audience, Chris and Eric's online framework for getting leads, and how to break past self-limiting beliefs to become the leader in your market. Now, even if you aren't a fitness professional, there is a ton of business info to help you get the business and lifestyle that you deserve. And if you are a fitness professional, you are in for a real treat. Now, remember, new episodes are released every Tuesday. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us online at bpbpodcast.com. And we have the full video episodes up on the BPB Podcast YouTube channel. So check them out, and we'll see you in the next one.
Hey there, remember to like, subscribe, and be sure to ring that notification bell to receive a new episode every Tuesday. See you next week.